I think that when you're starting off as a founder, a solo practitioner, or however a company started, you have a level of experience that you can rely on, and that's going to get you off the ground to a certain level, to a certain plateau of success. But to really scale, to really grow, you cannot do it unless you have the right team, the right culture in place, the right expectations. And, as a founder or any initial leadership, as they're spread thin as during growth periods, if you don't have the right systems in place, the right growth, mechanisms and personnel, you're never going to succeed, and you're going to end up plateauing or diminishing at some point.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? Every company scales because they have the right people. Today, we look at hiring the right people for your company. If you want to grow your company beyond where it is today, there's only so many hours that you can work, and you know that. So you have to find the right people, you have to develop those people, and they can actually grow the business beyond where you are today. Today we have our special guest, Spencer Hadelman. He is the founder of Advanta Marketing. They are kind of a full service approach, but they also have different service lines to help you get what you need to in the areas of marketing. They work with a lot of industries that don't really understand the power of marketing and are able to leverage that into more growth. But today we talk about hiring the right people with Spencer. Spencer shares some of his tips of hiring those right people, what he does inside of interviews, what he's looking for, and what often gets in the way of hiring that most people just don't think about. All inside this episode. As you know, we focus on you being the best leader you can be. When you're being a powerful leader, when you're inspiring a sense of ownership, you have people that are magnetic to the brand. That helps your hiring, but it also helps you be the leader that you need to be. If you want to figure out what's getting in the way of your leadership, whether it's your time, whether it's a strategy or approach or a skill, let's have a conversation. I have spent 10 years dedicating myself to help leaders, founders, CEOs, and their teams level up in the ways of leadership. I'd love to help you too. All you have to do is go to genehammett.com, schedule your call, and I'd love to talk to you about what's getting in your way, help you identify it, and then you can create a plan to move forward. That's how it works. Just go to genehammett.com and schedule your call. Now here's the interview with Spencer. Spencer, how are you?
I'm doing great, Gene. How are you?
I am fantastic. Excited to have this conversation with you. We've been talking for a week or so about how your company has grown so fast, making the Inc. list. Tell us a little bit about your company.
Well, it's called Advanta Marketing. I founded it in the end of 2015. Your traditional full service advertising agency that I think a lot of people are familiar with. And, I've broken it out into not necessarily a true advertising agency, where I also personally refer to it also as a marketing firm, because I think we do more than advertising. And, I have three different divisions. I have a traditional media division that people are familiar with, television, audio, radio campaigns, billboards, print, direct mail. We have a digital division that focuses on everything on digital side, social media, Google products, Bing, Amazon, et cetera. And then we have a creative division that does website design, logo design, branding, et cetera, video editing. And, we kind of want to cater to different types of clientele. And some people need us for everything. Some people need us for one division. And, I've kind of built it out where people within the company have different specialties. And depending on the projects and clients we bring in, that's where we go.
Spencer, we're going to dive into what got you to where you are, but I'm kind of curious. What do you wish people knew about marketing in today's world that they just don't seem to get? What do you have to keep repeating yourself over and whatnot?
I think it's funny because I think, we live in this day and age, this era where information is a new, probably the most important quantity. Data information is, the most important, valuable quantity we live with now. And, to me, I think that people read stuff on the internet or they hear things or someone else tells them like, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that, or this is the new thing. And I think everyone wants the quick, easy win, and they think there's a magic bullet. And, I think overall with marketing, like technology's changed, but a lot of philosophies of what works hasn't. And you have to have a mix marketing strategy, and not everything can be in one bucket.
Well, I agree with that. That's one reason why we have podcasts and other elements that actually get the message out there, because it helps in so many ways for people to know who you are and like you and trust you. So Spencer, I appreciate you sharing that piece of this in this interview, but let's dive into, why your company has grown so fast. We talked about this a couple of days ago, even. It's all about your people. So why are people and culture such an important piece to fast growth companies?
Well, I think that when you're starting off as a founder, a solo practitioner, or however a company started, you have a level of experience that you can rely on, and that's going to get you off the ground to a certain level, to a certain plateau of success. But to really scale, to really grow, you cannot do it unless you have the right team, the right culture in place, the right expectations. And, as a founder or any initial leadership, as they're spread thin as during growth periods, if you don't have the right systems in place, the right growth, mechanisms and personnel, you're never going to succeed, and you're going to end up plateauing or diminishing at some point.
Well, I totally agree with everything you just said there, talking about people scaling, talking about the systems of it, because as it grows, you have a little bit of chaos that starts to mix itself in, and you don't have the systems. How do you hire the right people for your company?
Well, I think it really comes down to a belief that I hire people, not resumes. I believe in myself, in my ability to coach, in my ability to teach, in my ability to inspire. And I also think sometimes, especially in my field, in my world of marketing, when sometimes people come in with very qualified resumes, they don't want to be told new processes or approaches. You can't, the old adage of can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? So I think sometimes when you have people that are a little more green but are so competitive or inspired, it makes it easier, I think, hiring those type of people than some people that have overqualified resumes.
No, I think a lot of people have seen it both ways. So what would you say to someone that's looking at hiring people and there's really can't invest the time into the green person? What do you say to that approach?
I think it depends on the stage you are at a company. And I think it also, even if you are hiring more experienced people, I think that's part of the conversation that has to happen through the growth and interview process is, asking questions about, their thoughts on their approaches, learning new approaches, systems, whatever it may be. And I don't think there's a right or wrong way, but I do think that it, depending on where you are as a company, you probably want a mix of it. But even the more experienced people, I think, have to be open to evolving and change. And that has to be made clear by whoever's, running HR or hiring or whatever it may be.
You have some unique approaches in the hiring process. I'm not sure if you want to share some of these secrets or not, but what could you share us about your hiring process?
Yeah, I think, I have one tactic, and I don't mind sharing it. And I think I mentioned to you before, I don't want to take credit for it, because I'm sure if I say I came up with it, that someone on the internet will be like, I did it first. But I can tell you, no one ever did it to me, and I don't know where I got it from. So, but I have a very good memory, in my opinion. And so before any interview, I read someone's resume, and they hand me their physical resume a lot of times in an interview. And the first thing I do is I slide it. They hand it to me, and I slide it across the table and throw it on the floor. And I do that because I want to see how they react to an adverse situation. I want to see if they get scared, if it stresses them out, what are their emotional reaction to it, even though I already know everything on that piece of paper. So any questions I have about it, I already have prepared in my head. But it's more about seeing how they react, because clients are going to put you in situations like that, or coworkers, or me, or whomever.
I've got to ask, what's the most interesting reaction that you got from that move?
Someone thought I did it by accident and picked it up and handed it back to me. That was pretty funny. I think you get a lot of people that there was one woman who you could visibly tell she lost color in her face, she didn't know how to react. And I think I think nowadays, between recruiters and coaches and whatever it is, I think people really come in prepared for interviews, and it's, I think, becoming more and more difficult to tell the difference between who's an actor and who's genuine, in terms of that. So I think think that that's something is anytime you can disrupt a situation and see how they react and go off script. I think any way you could make an interview off script and you get them at their true colors is the best way to go.
Now, Spencer and I have been talking about hiring the right person. Now, what you want to make sure that you're doing really well is making sure you have a skill fit and a culture fit for those roles. The culture fit comes from a lot of different places. One that's often overlooked is the values of the company. You want to make sure you have certain questions that you ask to assess where they are naturally with the values of the company. If one of your values is to take ownership, then you might ask a question to determine if they're willing to blame others or take ownership when something goes wrong. You need to be creative with these questions so that you're not just giving them the answer, but you want to make sure that you're able to tune in so that you have the right person that you're talking to and that you extend that offer to. Now back to Spencer. I want to dive into the leadership aspect of this. You've mentioned coaching a few times. How do you see coaching as a part of your leadership style?
I think my entire life, sports has been a huge part of my life. And my biggest mentors have always been coaches to me in my, not necessarily my professional life, but, a lot of it. And, to me, I believe that there's an element that I pull from sports where the best coaches are the ones that bring out the best in other people. And, for me, it's what, are we not on a field or a court or whatever it may be? Yeah, we're not. We're in an office or we're on Zooms or whatever. But how do you, as a leader of a company, bring out the best in your team, in your group? And, I think that as long as someone knows that you care about them, you love them, that you want the best, you can criticize or push them knowing that they know your best intentions and you're not doing it out of a place of bad intentions or spite.
One of the interesting analogies that I often use in my work as a coach is, how do you move from being a quarterback, right? Because a lot of people are really good at, organizing the people around this when they're on the field to play. But real coaching requires you to be on the sidelines and you can't actually take the field to play. You have to let others, you have to empower them fully. The coach is not allowed to step on the playing field and take any snaps or take any hit any balls and whatnot. Do you follow that same model with your coaching style?
I try to as much as I can. I think there are some, like in my specific instance, there's definitely some, clients or relations where I'm still on the field. But there's a lot where I've moved to the offensive coordinator or the head coach or whatever we want to call it, the pitching coach, whatever sport you want to roll with. But, to me, it's you will never grow or maximize your growth potential as a company unless you get to a point where you are coaching fully from the sideline. And you have to allow people to grow and succeed because one, you'll plateau as a company if you don't. And two, people won't ever have that full sense of pride and achievement unless they feel like they are the player and they're the quarterback of a client relation or a division or a situation or whatever it may be. And, it's tough sometimes to give that up, especially when it's your baby or you have pride and you have growth. But at the end of the day, I think you have to rely on it.
Now, hold on. Spencer's been talking about coaching. Now, I want to take a look at some of the coaching skills that are necessary for you to level up in this area. One is questions. You've got to understand how to ask powerful questions. I don't mean big, complicated questions. I mean ones that get them to really think about this. One question that one of my clients used inside his leadership is this your truth? Now, it may sound like an odd question out of context, but I love the question because if you ask an employee, is this your truth? And when they're trying to explain something to you or they're trying to tell you what their fear is, then they will have a different kind of response to that than their normal, tried and true. You want them to think about this before they answer. So you want to find out how you can ask the right questions. The second skill behind this is active listening beyond the words. Yes, it's good to listen to the words that they say, but what's the emotion behind it? What's getting in really inside their head around how they talk? And you've got to be able to ask questions around that so they fit together. And the third skill is the power of telling stories. There might be short stories or small stories that you can tell that really demonstrate what you need to convey to someone and what you really want them to understand. And the story is third person, so they can actually listen to the story And then you could ask them, how does this relate to your situation? So that they can go, oh, this is how I see it. Because that when they make the move, then they are the one taking ownership of it. If you give it to them, they don't have as much ownership. Hopefully you understand these coaching skills just a little bit for you to be the best leader you can be. Now back to Spencer. A lot of people embrace the coaching skills that are necessary for them to bring that into their leadership style. I think they don't really understand, where the line gets drawn. There are some times in coaching where questions are the only things that we use, and there are other times where we actually tell clients. But I think a lot of leaders err to the telling more than questions. Do you have any kind of way to remind yourself that the power of questions inside your coaching?
Well, I think that that's a good question. I think that, to me, if you have the ability to get to where you're trying to go with questions or push the limits or, circumvent, inefficient processes, I feel like there's a lot of different ways that we can all go about it. But, to me, I think it's hard to like make a statement on that question in general. Like I feel it's like almost a case by case basis. I want to give a better answer, but I feel it's something that, for me, it would be like a case by case basis. And I think if you have a cookie cutter approach, I think that those are sometimes when people get in trouble as well.
I want to start to wrap this up, but we've been talking about hiring the right people, Spencer. What have we left out that you feel like is important in building the right team and hiring the right people?
Well, I think also part of it's personality and culture. And it's not like, I don't want to say like, I wouldn't recommend a culture or process where it's like a fraternity or sorority where it's like everyone's the same or, that's not what I mean by that. But I do mean that part of it is like if you were an NBA GM or something and you're putting together a team, it's not just about skill set. It's also about how the players will interact with each other on the court or how they complement each other or whatever it may be. So I think that that's a big miss by a lot of companies at growth stages is thinking through and identifying personalities. And like I mentioned earlier, right, it's like people prepare for their interviews, they're coached up for their interviews. And so sometimes it's hard to pull out their true personalities from an interview. But I think that if you can find different ways to identify that and see how that will mesh with the role or the team that they're going to work with or whatever it may be, that's definitely a crucial point that I believe needs to be addressed. One last question.
What have you had to learn the hard way in growing your company and being the leader that you are today?
That I only have so many hours in my day and to keep a good work-life balance, to keep your sanity, to keep, everything that makes you the person you are that, clients, employees, and whoever want to be around, that you have to make an effort to be as efficient with your time management as possible. And, like that, finding out the hard way. I mean, I think that's something where, I think our company's grown a lot, but I think we should have probably grown more. And I think we will grow more once we get even better, processes in that. I think that you have to be willing to sacrifice. And if you don't, you'll learn some hard business lessons.
Well, I know a lot of leaders here struggle with that whole time component. We did a whole series on optimize your time. If you're ever interested in going deeper into that topic, make sure anyone that wants to listening in, check out that series. We talked about 20 different founders about how they optimize their time. So that being said, Spencer, really appreciate you being here and sharing your experience, sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me, Gene. And it's been awesome. If you ever need anything from me, please don't hesitate.
Here's the point where I reflect on what you just heard and what I'm taking away from today's interview. We've heard this many times before that you want to hire for a culture fit, not just a skill fit. And I think it takes both in today's world. And I know it's hard to hire the right people, but hiring the wrong people is such a big mistake. It will not only set you back, but it'll cause you a lot of stress, maybe even drive away some of the good people inside your team. So what Spencer's been talking about is how do you identify the right people for your organization, taking into account the skill fit, the culture fit, but also the fit with others and how the personalities will mix together, looking at leadership and that coaching style, very powerful way to get people to grow through that, whatever challenges are in front of them. So if you are looking for ways to level up your leadership, I'd love to invite you to a conversation with me. Absolutely not going to try to sell you anything. I promise you, this is what I love to do is just help people that want to be better leaders, identify what's getting in their way and help them move forward, create that plan. And it's absolutely free. Just go to genehammett.com and you can register for schedule your call right there and it'll help you become the leader that your team deserves. Just go to genehammett.com and schedule your call now. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.